guys. Hey, thanks for showing up. Tonight I thought pretty simple forging demonstration. I brought a couple of meteorites which we just checked on the SCM to try to see what the chemistry was. And the little meteorite actually has nickel, and the bigger one doesn't, it's just iron. And a customer just sent that to me. They said, oh, it's from Arizona, and he wasn't sure what the nickel content was, but it looks like there's 0 in there. So I don't even know if it's a meteorite. We're going to have that cut so I can forge a piece of that, but it's not exactly what I'm looking for. So I'm going to forge the nickel meteorite. My experience with these, with this particular flavor that comes from South America, I think it's called something like Campo de Cielo. It's like field of the sky, because a big meteorite fell. There's lots of meteorites that are being traded out today, and museums and stuff that have come from this place. I think it was late 1700s when it fell. That one we checked in the SCM. It's got somewhere, my stats on it, the card that I got when I bought it say 6.7% nickel. The SCM just said it had about 9% nickel, so we're sure it has nickel in there. My experience, if you were in the lecture last night, is that they like to crumble. The last one that I forged had a fissure in it, and sure enough, as soon as I hit it, it started to shear there. This one may be different. You might be able to see something once it gets hot, but we'll see. They're kind of a thing you got to keep wrangling in. So we'll see. Kind of new hammer, new tongs, new whole setup. So I'll do my best. But I also brought some steel that I made in my little induction furnace. So this is 1% carbon. It's got a pinch of manganese in it and a pinch of chromium in it. And this is my starting material. So generally I'll make 3 or 4 of these guys. One of them will have meteorite in it to bring the nickel content up to about 1.5%. And sometimes I'll forge out a meteorite this way and lay it in, but it's hard to control the content. So I actually have to make the material, stretch it, fold it, and then incorporate it into another billet. Because I don't want 6 or 7% nickel. I want 1.5% nickel. I kind of want to mimic L6 or 15N20, because that stuff still likes to harden. It's nice and wear resistant. It's the same stuff they make saw blades out of. So the big circular saw blades that you see at a sawmill, those blades need to be incredibly tough because they're like 6 feet long and they're stuffing logs into them, and you know those things got to take a lot of flex and not blow apart. So I'll usually make up like a 1%, a 0.9%, maybe a 0.8%, and then a pinch of manganese. If you go straight carbon, nothing else, the hardening is really shallow. And I'm looking for some more depth of hardening, at least on a kitchen knife. You know, I want 30% of it or more to be hardened. So you've got lots of room to sharpen that knife. I'm assuming that people are sharpening their knives all the time. And there's no free lunch. You're going to lose some material every time you sharpen your knife. But I would much rather use a sharp knife than be afraid to lay it onto the stone and take some material away. So I'll forge this guy out, and there's another one. I was going to forge them both out. So you guys are going to, they're cutting that?
Yeah, do you want me to not cut it?
No, I want you to, if you can cut it first, and then maybe I can incorporate these two together. Forge weld these two together, so you can keep a half, and or we just take a look. We just really want to see, right? Yeah. So we can cut it, and then I can forge weld that together, and then we can stretch it and fold it. So that's what I was planning to do. Happy to answer any questions that you might have in the meantime.
Do you take visitors at your shop?
Sometimes. I usually get requests every week, and as much as I like to show people around, it's a little time consuming. So if you just email me, if I'm in the shop and I'm working, I'm happy to show you around. Yeah, if you're in the neighborhood, come on by. Happy to.
Why don't you use meteorites on
Hear that sound?
your nickel? That's perfect. Thanks for asking.
I was just fascinated by the legends. So there are lots of legends, both from, and not legends so much as like in Indonesia, they use meteorite. They use them to fold into the press. So the Chris is really a magical tool. It's not so much a real weapon to poke somebody with, but it is kind of the spiritual completion of a young man. When your family had enough money and you were ready, like to move into the world and there was power you wanted to bring to your family, you would go sit with the bladesmith, the impu. The impus were kind of like, there's the king, he's got his court poet, and he's got his impu. So the impus, the bladesmith, could do magical stuff. He essentially took dirt on the ground and transformed it into a hardened, sharpened tool. Well, a meteorite fell in Java, it split into two. One half of it is by the Great Town, and there's a goat over it. Great Town's the palace, and it's a sacred thing. So in Indonesia, like in Bali, every day, every morning, a tray of offerings are made. So you put one at the front door. It's got a little rice, it's got a flower pebble, it's got some water in it, it's an offering to the gods. You have a temple in your house, you just put them all over the place, to protect your house and your family. This meteorite, they put offerings to every day. You're not supposed to touch it. The other piece they gave to the impus. They're like, look, we have something from the astral plane. You're taking iron from the terrestrial plane. You fold them together while you're doing a meditation to make this blade. So if you're a young man, you come to the bladesmith and you're like, we would sit and talk like a therapist, or like a fortune teller. Like, what are you looking for? I'm looking to bring prestige or power to my family. And if you look at a Chris, it's this wavy blade. That's the Naga, the mythical serpent that lives in the sea. Now, if it's straight, the serpent is sleeping. But you can have anywhere up to, I think the most I've ever seen is like 24 curves in this thing. And the number of curves dictates the type of magic that you can bring into your family. So I spent a fair amount of time in Indonesia and Bali. I love this stuff. I think it's really cool. There's all kinds of stories about on certain auspicious days, the Chris's from all of Bali fly out of their resting places and they buzz around the palace. There's a little village that had, their houses are made of bamboo and straw and a thatched roof. And there was the village temple, and the Chris was residing in this box in the village temple, and the temple burned down. But the box and the Chris were fine. The power from the Chris was so powerful that it burned the building down. So they rebuilt it and put the Chris, but it burned down again. So then they built it on a cinder blocks, and there's this singed space on the wall behind it. There's all kinds of crazy stories about guys going into battle. The guy pulls his Chris out and a horde of bees comes out of the point. So I love these stories. I think they're super cool. And recently I was working on the northwest coast of these same kind of stories, big blades. And there's not really a history of metalworking on the west coast. There's really not a lot of available ore. There's a little bit of ore, but not a whole lot. Lots of copper in Alaska, no iron. So these big blades, they used to, where they come from, and they said, well, a woman blacksmith forged it from a meteorite. Well, we've done some testing on them, and they're wrought iron. So they came probably from the iron wrapped on the spar of a ship, either a Russian clipper ship or maybe a Japanese fishing vessel that was in a wreck, washed up on the shore. Native Americans came and said, hey man, there's a bunch of good stuff here, let's scavenge it, there's some iron here, this is beautiful stuff. They forged it into these big blades. But again, the story was meteorite. So I just said, I'm going to try it, let's see what it's like. It's been done in lots of cultures. And so I started doing it, and people love it. They're like, this thing is the coolest story. It is really just an additional nickel. We are riding on space. We're all stardust, right? So just the fact that this one came from the atmosphere is outside of our atmosphere. But
Good to go.
sorry.
Yeah. Alright. What do you want? Welding gloves? TIG gloves?
Just a little shorter. Oh, yeah, more than anything shorter. Yeah, those are good. Let's do those.
So left and a right?
Yep.
Good.
Pretty short too.
So I want to be a little bit careful with this. I don't want to get it too hot. I think the grain structure is pretty big because this thing was liquid and then kind of cooled as slowly as it cooled. You know, it's induction, so it goes up to liquid, hangs out at liquid for a little while, and then you shut the machine down, and it takes about 10 minutes to cool. But the grains are kind of big, and the carbon is sort of high, and that is 1%. And so I don't want to really go after it right away, or if they have a tendency to crumble or crack. When your patterning is all done, and after if you're going to put a center rib, lots of them have a big center rib, so you forge that all out, get your layer count up,
right?
Forge in the center rib, and then put the curves in. It's like the last thing that you would do. I've never made one, but that's how I would do it. That's how I would make one.
Even for like, say, a pistol grip or a cookery, again, you make it the whole thing straight and then introduce the curve to it?
Well, no, like on a cookery, I'd probably put it in early on. I mean, you can set it at the end, but when you're forging an edge, right, the back's going to be thicker, the edge is going to be thinner. So if you start out with a straight, flat, parallel piece of bar stock, you just start forging in the edge, that's going to stretch. It's expanding the metal this way, and it's expanding the metal this way. So the point naturally wants to curve up. If you look at people's first knives, they're always this big. They look like a skinning knife, because that's just the way the material wants to move. So you have to kind of keep correcting for that, or start out with a piece of material that's down, then forge the edge, and it just comes up. I'm just trying to bring this thing up to like a red heat first, and then gently kind of tap it. Another good way to handle these is just to thermal cycle them. You try to reduce the grain size just by heating it up to transformation temperature where it goes to non-magnetic, setting it aside, and then letting it cool to black. It doesn't have to cool to room temperature, and you're going to shrink the grains down. And that's a sort of a friendly way to start it. It's not necessary as long as I don't overheat it on the first couple of heats, and I hit it gently with the hammer, the power hammer. So usually I do this in a gas forge at home with a door that slides up and down, natural gas forge. Usually I'll start forging this as the furnace is coming up to heat. I don't really want to start when it's at 2350 because of the size of the ingot, the outside skin can get hotter than I want it to before the inside really comes up to temperature. But if the furnace is still ramping up and I'm around, let's say 2000 or 2100 degrees, then I can get a nice kind of soft heat on it and not worry about it cracking so much. About coal, I have not used coal in 25 years, but the one thing I remember about it is it's a different rhythm than a gas forge. It's a thing you sort of have to tend and pay attention to, and I'm glad he's watching it, but it's a thing that you get the clinkers out, there's things that kind of bind together and get kind of lumpy in there, and so it's sort of a beautiful meditation, you know, it's kind of a living thing. And with a gas forge, you don't really get that. You just, you turn it on and go. But it sure is convenient.
Isn't the coal constantly introducing more carbon to your or what?
This the cold thing? I don't think so. No. There's different parts of the fire. And so if you had it at just the right part, you could potentially pick up some carbon. I haven't done a lot of experimentation with it, but when we talked about it in school, it didn't seem to be a big deal. As long as you're not burning your steel. If your steel's burning, you're going to see it sparking. And that means you're losing carbon. And as far as putting carbon in, I think you need a little bit more soak time, a little bit more hang time. So we're just starting to come up. I'm going to try and get it nice and even before I start squishing it out here. Anybody know where that small meteorite is? The really shiny one? Color, just trying to make sure. You can check it with a magnet. As soon as it goes non-magnetic, we're probably around 1400 degrees. I want to take it up to maybe 18, 19, something like that. What was that?
It's not super strong,
I'm usually going to like at least 400 layers. Maybe that's why all the bubbles disappear. You know, it's probably the second round of forging.
Yeah.
There it goes. There's another thing we have to pay attention to, like how it's starting to get my footing here and realize how far down into that hole I have to push that needed to bring the temperature up. And the top half stays cooler than the bottom half, right? And I'm looking for a nice even heat. The beauty of a natural gas door is a propane door is, okay, it's smaller than the heat, right? That's the door, put the heat on the inside, and close the door, you wait, and you check it, it's pretty much the same thing all around. It might be turned over, because as you said it, it's cool, setting into the furnace, the bottom part of the cooler is such that you got the furnace, so that's going to be cooler. So as the top part of the unit comes up to temperature, just go in and turn it over, leave it there for another 60, 90 seconds, bring it up, and it's a lot like cooking. And if you think about cooking marshmallows, you just have to pay attention to dark zone. That's when it wants to rumble sometimes. Well, like, had like wheelers, right?
Different melted cracks on the electric. Oh, but you're thinking E-car.
Yeah, how do you car?
From cast iron to oh, so much time. Yeah, oh, I'm sure.
pounds, but the block is this big. what's possible. Like, how can I maximize the use of these tools? So that's pretty nice and fast for the front end here.
Bob, how do you manipulate a 30-pound piece of steel that you're working on?
You take a little chunk of rebar, a pretty fat one, like 5/8, 3/4 inch head knife. You tack that onto the end, and the whole thing was into the furnace. When it's short, it's not bad. And then you just grab it and gone. We got a whole bunch of tongs that are just great for grabbing rebar.
So you just pick up your 30 piece like this and you roll.
Yeah, it's about this high, and that's why it's made so. Once that thing starts getting long, then it gets painful. So I try not to try anything out more than a gave it. Then you're kind of away from the hammer, and it's harder to manipulate. I try not to do a lot of 30-pounders because it's hard out there. And it's not necessary when I'm just making kitchen knives, right?
Yeah. Wait, yeah, what are you making with it there?
So this is preparatory piece of steel that I was going to combine with that other piece of steel. I mean, it's going to get too long for that. So I'm just going to flatten this out and let it cool, kind of grind it, stack it, and then I'll try to force weld this together with the bowl. So that we can do that. Yeah, the blade to keep it nice and even. And I'm going to do about 50-50 on each side. In other words, I'm not going to just stay on one side.
How much pressure?
About 4 to 6 pounds of pressure. Great question. The way you check is, I've been doing it for a little while, so I'm familiar with it, but you can get a baking scale and push the knife. Let's say this is your scale. Don't put your hand on the scale, put the knife on the scale, and then put your finger on it, and wait till you see 6 pounds, and then you'll have kind of a sense memory of what that feels like. So what I'm looking for is a thing called a wire edge, a beard, or a burr. And you can feel it. You will be able to feel it. And what's happening is those two sides are coming together and then intersecting, and then you're going to get this little fuzzy wire edge. It's called a beard or a wire edge or a beard or a burr. And it, if you've ever filed your nails, nail file usually has two sides, a coarse and a fine. So to get the gross geometry, you're going to hit it with the coarse. And then there's a little bit of nail that sort of flops back and forth. That's kind of like the wire edge. And that's what I'm looking for. It will tell me that I'm done with the first stone. I cut in both directions just for efficiency, but you don't need to. You can do this. You can do figure eights. It doesn't matter. We're basically rubbing metal on a rock and we're abrading, material away. People usually do whoever taught them. So if your granddad said you got to do figure eights, you'll probably do figure eights. Some people say you have to go away from the edge. If you go into the edge, you're going to ruin that edge. I was helping my wife cook one time, and we're making Easter dinner. What can I do for you? She said, well, cut the end of the ham off. Why am I cutting the end of the ham off? She said, well, that's how Grandma does it. Why am I cutting? This is perfectly good. She's like, I don't know, ask Grandma. So I asked Grandma, why am I cutting the end of the ham off? And she said, well, we only had a little oven and a little pan, so we had to cut it off so it would fit in the pan, so it would fit in the oven. Every once in a while I want to stop and feel for the wire edge, and I can feel it. I'm not going to feel it on this side because I was just sharpening this side. If I sharpen this side, I won't feel the wire edge here, but I'll feel it here. In other words, it gets pushed from side to side. But once I feel it come up, I know I have established the geometry. Now all I need to do is refine the surface, because that edge, if you look at it under magnification, is jagged, right? These particles are 1,000 grit size. So they leave 1,000 grit size groove and 1,000 grit size peak. I'm looking for a smooth, consistent edge so I can do that pull or push cut. Are there any shop towels? Wipe the grit off, and here's a way that I can prove that there's still a wire edge there without magnification. I can push and it won't push cut, but if I slide, I can feel it tearing the paper, and I can actually see some remnants. If I look up at the light, the cut is kind of hairy because it's a little Microsoft, very good paper fibers. So to further refine the edge, I go to a finer stone. So that was 1,000 grit. This is a 5,000 grit stone. Now this is not essential for, like a home kitchen knife, but it gives a really beautiful high polished edge. So this is 5 times finer than this stone. And it's denser and more compacted, so it's not going to take as much water. These stones take very little water because of how dense and compact they are.
Does water have to be
We just had a jump.
And sometimes people use oil stoves, but it's sort of a pain because it's messy, and the oil that they give you is mineral oil, but they don't tell you that. They just say it says honing oil on the outside. So then when people run out of it, they go, well, it's kitchen oil. I'm like, sure, I can use olive oil. And then it polymerizes over time and just completely loads up your stove. So I don't know if you can see this, but the edges start to lean and come up to a mirror finish. But there is still a wire edge there. This is still an abrasive. It's still generating a beard on there. And I can tell that it wants to push cut a little bit, but still won't. But it'll slide cut beautifully. So the final step is stropping. Now stropping on a piece of leather is sort of the nicest, but this piece of cardboard has some abrasive quality to it. I wouldn't clean my glasses here, right, because it'll scratch them. So if you don't have a piece of leather, you just have a piece of cardboard or an old pair of blue jeans or a paper bag, you can actually take a piece of paper bag and lay it on your stone. It'll stick because it's, kind of wet. And that has a little abrasive quality to it. Kind of like cardboard. So you stick the cardboard down, and then you're going to go backwards on your strop. If I go forwards, it's going to cut into the stropping material. And what this is doing is polishing off that wire edge with a little bit of abrasive that's here. Same pressure, 4 to 6 pounds. The duller your knife, the more pressure you're going to need through this process. You can still go back to 4 to 6 pounds pressure here.
That's a much higher angle for stropping.
Same thing.
Same angle.
Yeah. And what I'm hoping now is that I get a push cut. So I don't even need it to slide cut on this. So it takes very little time to actually do this. It's nice to have a nice piece of steel to start with. Not all knives are created equally. If you get a very inexpensive Chinese knife, it could be really miserable to sharpen it because it's stainless. It's probably in the 50 Rockwell range. It's kind of gummy and mushy, and it just doesn't want to take an edge very well. But if you've got a nice piece of tool steel, this is 5200 at probably 61 Rockwell, and it just sharpens beautifully. Really nice blade structure. So let's go through that again. I'll just. If you have questions, let me know.
What's the purpose of honing rod?
Great question. Yeah. So the question was, what's the purpose of the honing rod or the steel? If you buy a block set, there's a round rod that comes with it. That's called the steel, and that. Okay. That rod is probably a W5 steel. And it's chrome coated, so it's quite hard. They probably need it about as hard as they can get, 66, 67 Rockwell, and they've cut linear grooves in it. So it's actually a linear file. Right? Each one of those little beaks, they try to make nice and crisp and clean. They're not terribly expensive things, so they're pretty good. And the ones from Sheffield, England are nice. The ones from Germany are nice. The ones from China are horrible. The grooves are terrible and deep and really rough. And then they chrome plate it, which brings the hardness up to like 72 on the outside. So because we've got something that's so much harder, it's a file. It's actually filing into the edge of your knife. Now the ones that you see most common are they're called regular cut steel with regular cut grooves. And you run your knife along that, and it will actually cut the teeth into the edge of your knife. So in a restaurant, if you're in the middle of service and your knife goes dull, run it back and forth on that steel, generate some teeth on the edge of your knife and go back to work. And what you see is that guys who use that steel, they'll go back to work. Those teeth don't have a lot of structural integrity. So the board, the cutting surface, your board is where most of the dulling of your tool is coming from. It's like a cucumber or a strawberry or a chicken breast. It's running it back and forth on a piece of dry wood or a piece of plastic or a bone or a stone and a peach and a stone fruit. That's going to take the edge off your knife. This is quite small, right? It's smaller than a human hair. It can go right to the edge of the knife. So it's kind of fragile. There's another type of honing rod. I mean, there's diamond and Franklin rods where they nickel plate diamond. They're incredibly aggressive, and they're only removing material. Now there is another type of steel that's polished. It's a butcher steel or a packing house steel. It has no groove to it whatsoever. And the purpose of that is to uncurl the edge. So as you're cutting, let's say this is your knife edge, and you're cutting on the board, over time that edge will become unaligned. And so it will no longer cut efficiently. And so material is valuable enough that we can straighten that out by using a polished rod. Some of that uncurling happens with regular cut steel, but really the main function of the butcher steel or packing house steel is to uncurl the edge. So those guys come into the factory, and of course it's all about production, right? Chickens are coming down the conveyor belt, and they've got probably a Kevlar glove on. They get their knife when they come in the morning, it's sharpened to a razor sharp, so you could push it up. And they've got to, take that chicken apart in no time. So you might hit the bone, they might hit the belt, which is probably cut through. And each one of those dings might misalign the edge and slow them down. They don't want to be doing this all day long. You're going to get carpal tunnel. They want to go push, push, slide back, and make it cut each time. So if their knife is not performing, those guys are really tuned in. They'll pull up their polished steel, run the knife on it just to realign the edge without any invasiveness to it, and then they're back to work. At lunchtime, they'll drop the knives off to the sharpening guy that's in-house, get a new set, and then come back to the knife. So they're always working with a razor sharp knife. So it's alignment, and it's also removing material.
Is there any reason for a home chef to use a steel, or is it?
Yeah, to just quickly throw an edge back on. So yeah, I like a ceramic. So it removes a little bit of material. This one's not bad. It's almost dropping through, but it's still a little bit sluggish. So I'll start with 1,000 grit. A little bit of water.
How long is it typical location for a push cut last? Say 20 minutes.
And if you're careful cutting and you store it like in an edge guard or someplace where it's not knocking on a bunch of tools, you have a nice cutting board, 6 months. If you're really careful. There's a martial arts exercise where, one guy will lay on the ground and put a watermelon on his stomach. And another guy will take a sword and cut the watermelon. And it's a razor sharp sword. It's not a tray. Not cut the guy. Right? That's how typically it is. If you approach cutting your vegetables that way and have that state of mind, your knife is never banging into the board. And so you can actually extend the life of the edge. And some people are just like, they got 2 knives and they're chopping up parsley up, right? I used to do that in the restaurant place. It's a big amount of parsley and then just go and take care of your knife. So it's kind of like me buying a car from you and saying, how long will it stay clean? Where you park it, what kind of weather, all that kind of stuff. Same thing, 10 to 15 degrees. I know what I'm starting with. The paper test is really important to give you a sense of how bad the edge is. This knife is really round, thin, which is nice. There's not a lot of material to remove. So the wire edge is popped up already. That's really fast. So now I know it's time to go to the second stone, for the tertiary stone, in this case, the 5,000
Spread.
So a lot of these stones want to load up. And what's happening is metal's coming off the edge, it's getting impacted into the stone, and if you let that build up, you're essentially running metal on metal. We've lost the abrasive quality of the stone. So you want to get that stuff moving around, or a lot of times in these kits you get what's called a Navarro stone. The Navarro stone cleans the other stones. It just relieves that metal particulate from the surface.
Thoughts on different angles? Like I work with some guys who flat on one side and put it in on the other, flat.
So a sushi knife is a completely different critter. It is asymmetrical when they make it. And it's meant, most of them are right-handed. You really have to look from left-handed sushi knife because the whole geometry of the knife is different than when you go this way instead of going this way. So on a right-handed knife, the primary bevel is on the right-hand side. So when you cut that tuna, it falls to the right. As far as taking, even though this is a Asian-style vegetable cleaver, it's a 50-50 edge. It is ground evenly on both sides. So to put an asymmetrical edge on here, it has minimal advantage. Some people are trying to sell, pick the food to the right. I really find that that's
These guys do the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was true or not.
Well, if you have a Japanese knife, you have to do that knife on one side of the knife. That makes sense? That's the way it's ground. It's like a chisel. You can't get into a 50-50 edge on a chisel. It's all on one side.
How about that? Is there any special merit?
Not really. I mean, Santoku is just sort of a shape, so I would want to know, is it, if it's carbon steel, then you just basically need to keep it clean and dry. You'll get a patina on it, like this knife has. So you don't want to leave it in water. You don't want to cut acidic things and leave it laying around. If it's a stainless steel Santoku, it's just a normal 50-50 edge. You want to be sensitive to the stone and make sure you're not picking up grit from the previous stone and sort of contaminating the surface of this polishing stone. And right now, all I'm thinking about is it's just polishing the edge. I'm not really removing a lot of material, I'm just bringing the finish up. And at the end, I usually just balance it out. I make sure it's nice and even in the center. We're starting to get a nice little polish on that guy. So again, I'm pretty sure I have a wire edge, even though it's a 5,000 grit stone. I can test it by trying to push cut through the paper. It'll slide cut beautifully. Put it on my cardboard, make sure there's no grit on here.
Are you using that same 4 to 6 pounds of sharpening?
Yes. It's that easy. That's the whole thing. And the biggest key is the first stone and establishing the wire edge. Don't leave the first stone until you can feel it, and it won't show up simultaneously from the tip to the heel. It'll usually show up in the rocker first. And so then you may need to just concentrate on the point and then concentrate on the heel until you can feel the wire edge the full way. Do a couple of balancing strokes, then go to your secondary stone. Now you can go, you have one more now? Yeah. All right.
How do you know that your angle is consistent, or how do I know why I'm screwing it up and I can't make a sharp
Oh
knife?
yeah, great question. So one of the tricks, if you're just starting, if you want to learn how to do this, don't start with your grandfather's 14-inch carbon steel knife that I used in the butcher shop for 20 years. Because it's going to be a huge challenge. The back of that knife is going to be thick, the knife is worn, so you're going to tuck into the blade, where it is a tapered piece of metal. So every time you sharpen it, that blade kind of gets thicker, thus it's going to pull back down. So the best way to learn this is to buy inexpensive variant. Something redeemable, it's plastic handle, decent quality, but not extraordinary. That would be a $60 thing, $10. Bring it home, slice the paper. There's a slight trick to the paper, and that is you don't want to try to push the knife in towards your hand because the paper's collapsing. So if you put the cut so that the paper is in tension, then you can really see what's going on. So you don't go straight down, you go kind of at a 45 degrees away from your hand. So you take your paring knife and you slice the paper so you have a sense, memory, how sharp that is. And most knives, even if it's relatively inexpensive knives, come from the store with a head. Then get a rock with a thick steel table and destroy the edge. So break it off with a rock. I'm starting with coarse stone. Now, you've destroyed the edge, so you know you're starting at a horrible condition. So you need a stone that's like 220 grit or 450 grit because you're hard off and actually do it. Now, to do a 20-pound angle, you can take a wide Sharpie or black marker and make the mark along the edge of the knife. Then when you lay the knife on the stone, you take the stretch, stop and look, and see if you're kind of rocking and rolling. You might see that on the rocker, you're coming up on the knife. So more of that line is gone. And back to that, you stay low, and the line of the marker is going to be narrow. If you read it, it'll tell you exactly where you want and what you're doing. You can stretch the mark back on, take a few more strokes and tell yourself. And it's like riding a bike. You're going to crash and burn. That stone, you're going to run into something to do about it. You've got more and more control. Pretty soon you're looking at the mountain. And you can also see the bevel. The bevel is changing width, and you are changing your attitude. Like stone. So, this tube, let's see where we are. Yeah, not bad. They're all in equal condition. Clearly, this customer takes care of his tools. And, you know, it's funny, but I joke about it, but when knives come into the shop, I can tell how, you know, what's been going on, how they've been treated. This is a really beautiful, nice and even patina. You know, somebody really loves this tool and they're taking care of it. You can tell because of the edge quality and how it's been used. The edge is all smashed up and, you know, the patina is dark and stained. Then somebody's left, you know, acids on there and they're not really tuned into it.
Is there a way to kind of pre-patina a knife yourself? Rather than wait for a couple of years?
Yep. Some guys use mustard. Anything acidic will do it. So vinegar will do it, mustard will do it, strawberries will do it, meat. But what I've found on forcing a patina is that it doesn't seem to be as strong and stable as a patina that grows naturally. One that takes longer to grow seems to be more durable. So the wire edges come up from here to here. There's a little bit missing on the heel and a little bit missing on the tip. Right now I'm using about 3 pounds of pressure because the edge is really nice and thin. The steel is extremely responsive. I'm trying to use the full surface of the stone. If I just hang out in the center, the stone will begin to wear and dish. And then it becomes very hard to pull my angle. So you always want to keep the stones nice and flat. And there's another stone that's meant specifically to keep your stones flat. So it's a stone for stones. There's that. And you can go straight back and forth. Move over, go straight back and forth, move over, go straight back and forth, do the same on the other side. I like this action because you run the risk when you go straight back and forth of making a mark when the edge of the stone is. If you're sweeping through, there's a lot less of a chance to do that. Alright, so now I've got the wire edge full length. choice of using that kind of as a marketing thing, where they would do 3 devils in there. I just don't think it's necessary. If the material's good, and the knife is ground nice and thin, and then you put a nice, 15-degree bevel on it, it would be very, very difficult to measure an edge and not really like that. Measuring an edge, the cutting efficiency of an edge seems to be an incredible challenge. There's a machine called the Capture machine, hands paper that they got as abrasive, like powdered quartz to it, and they have a stack, and it's hooked up to a computer, and then the knife gets clamped with a vise, and then there's a measured force that comes down, and they see, the initial cutting ability, and then number of cuts over time, and it produces this graph. And but very, very small changes change that graph. So you can change the chemistry, you can change the geometry, you can change the finish on the edge, and keeping all of those things consistent from one knife to the next is a huge challenge. And they've been trying to figure it out. It's one of the things in the factory, in the knife factory, that is still done by hand by human beings. Have not been able to roboticize this sharpening process. So people are still sitting at a big rotary whetstone, carefully laying an edge on very high grit stone, and then stropping it on a power leather strop or a slow rotating stone. So I think that I find that kind of interesting. Recognize that part. I find it to be an incredibly challenging thing. Any other questions about sharpening? How do you polish serrated knives? I have a stones that I just make up by hand. So there's a stick that's called a silicon carbide dressing stick, and I have a vitrified aluminum oxide wheel. I have a bunch. There's basically 2 serration patterns that I see most that come to the shop. So I'll look at it, and if I have a stone that's already shaded to that serration, then I'll throw that stone on the machine. It's a very slow rotating machine, and it's basically keyed into each one of the serrations. And then we go over a sisal wheel with a black polish compound, spiral silver cotton with black compound, and then spiral silver with chrome oxide. And the wheels will conform the polish and the serration. But there's 1,000 different sizes of serration, so each one has to be different. In the factory, they make the worn-out nitride coated wheels. The wheels are made out of non-steel, and they CNC the pattern, molded, coated with particles, and then the machine comes in, cuts, swab, and the whole knife serrated at once. And then it goes through the deburr in a couple of years, and then it's polished out. You don't, at least for food in the culinary world, you don't really need those serrations near a polish. If they're still a little bit rough, most of that cutting surface is up off the board. It's just the points of the serration that are dragging on the board, whereas the serration is cut off. So if it's still micro-serrated in there, it's just going to add to the color. Anything else? I don't. But again, you can put toothpaste on here. That would help. You could put the oxide on here. There's a million ways. If you start to go down this rabbit hole, this is a 5,000 grit stone. So you can go to 30,000 grit, and then you can have a balsa strop, and then you can have a leather strop, and then you can have a compound on one strop. So you can figure out a thing with a thing all night, like mirror finish. And it's cool. It's really fun. I don't know if you're going to see a huge difference in how that manufacturing will look inside. But it might make you feel really good about it. Or you really impress your friends when you pull that knife out and the finish just clean. So, I've heard that a nice polish on a Japanese store, which is very expensive, like $200 a minute for a professional polisher. Keep in mind, this guy spent one of the longer finishes, 10 years, to learn to polish. And supposedly that finish is like an accidental finish, something you find on the line. That's how, 100,000 grit. And we're looking into the source, of a Japanese sword. So I was in Mike's office a few hours ago, and he had some samples that were cross sections of the Japanese sword, and we could actually, they were polished and mounted and stuff, and we could see where the part of the material, where the part of the construction was, and then the color construction. And you know, one of the simplest ways to make sword, or a common technique, is you forge out the tomahawk and make something that looks kind of like a hot dog bun, but fold it up. And that's all hard rolled, potentially mark-acidic material, so simply about a 0.8 carbon. The stuff they put in the center is more like mild steel or medium carbon steel, it's heavy, 40 or something like that. Stuff that really doesn't go hard. And I'll wrap that around there. It's about this big, and it turns into a 30-inch sword.
So they start with two separate materials itself when you're going.
Yeah. So when the tomahawk is made and broken up, they sort it. High carbon, number one material, medium carbon, number two material, low carbon, number three material. The sorts what comes into that, into this, into that. Takes it back to the shop, folds all the good stuff together, hot dog bun. Folds medium to low carbon stuff into the core. And there's a number of different ways to build that sword. Everybody's got their own idea about how to be the best construction, the strongest, and the durable. But this is a simple one. So you wrap that high carbon stuff around that low carbon stuff, you stretch it out. Well, in the samples in his office, it is really thin on the outside of the structure of that sword. So when you push that, it punches the water. So all we have to do is pull that skin off fast enough to generate the Now the skin goes all the way up the side of the sword. But now the sword is so thick, there's so much thermal mass there, that's, you know, we're trying to lift the heat off of that. That part's, that high carbon steel outside can't move fast enough to generate mark-acidic. So as that cross-sectional thickness gets thicker, we start to get a lifted structure. There's some mark-acidic going on there, some daylight out there, some things to grow up, and that's where you get that color. So it's all about size, thickness, and carbon content. So when those guys are forging that high carbon stuff, it is sparking like crazy because they're starting with material that's around 1.2% carbon. They need to bleed off some of that carbon, otherwise they'll lose interest. And they're trying to get it down to 0.7 or 0.8 to that. And it's all done by feel.
Because they have to qualify the materials for their carbon content.
Yes.
How do they do that?
You can tell with the crystals. So
They use a microscope.
yeah, just by that. You look at it, and then you all do this high carbon stuff. You can tell that the really good stuff is bright, shiny, the color blue steel. It's really good stuff. And so you sort of know as they put it up in the high carbon. I'm not sure what that is. So you forge it flat, heat it up, punch it, put it on the anvil and break it. And if it's iron, it just doesn't want to break. It's just
Yeah.
so then I know that stuff well. If it sort of wants to break, that's medium carbon stuff. If it cracks like glass, I know that's high carbon. Yeah.
Some knife makers do an additional like, flame tempering step towards the end.
They can. I
Yeah.
mean, you can heat treat with a torch, and you can temper with a torch. I don't really subscribe to that. It's good to know it. It's good to understand what the dynamic is, so that in a pinch, if you just had a fireplace, and you might be able to make a knife or two if you needed to. But these transformations require time. So I would rather have them soak for an hour in an environment that I can dial in. But you can, in a pinch, heat treat with a torch. So you watch the color, and as it comes up to kind of orange, you can touch it off on the magnet. When it goes non-magnetic, it's probably also at critical temperature. So I mean, that's how blacksmiths and bladesmiths would do it. They just keep the magnet nearby, heat it up with the coal, heat it up with the torch, lean it on nice and evenly, keep touching it off. When it goes non-magnetic, punch it into the oil, let it cool down to room temperature, polish it. It doesn't have to be a high polish, like 220 grit. And then if you take a torch and heat the back of the knife, and then let the heat creep towards the edge, you'll see oxidizing colors.
Yeah, that's it.
And they start out, you know, a very, very light golden color, like maybe the color of this wood. Then they move to a gold, like the bamboo, and then they turn brown, and then they go blue, and then they go purple, and then it goes silver, and then it starts to go back. But by the time you're at blue, you're at 570. By the time you hit, you know, silver, you're at 700. So all they do is hit it with the torch and wait for that kind of blue to start and the gold start to run towards the edge, and then take the torch away. And if you see blue starting to get close to your cutting edge, of course, polish it again.
So is that just what people do? Because I don't understand how that's going to help the structure of the knife. It's just like oxide forming on that.
No, because you're putting heat in, and you've got fresh martensite in that steel. It's under tremendous stress. And when I went to bladesmithing school, my roommate was an engineer. And he had been making stuff since he was 5 years old, so he's the best guy in the class. He really knew how to move that steel. He made a knife, like the second day it was forged out beautifully. He treated it, quenched it, but he didn't temper it. He brought it home and laid it on the dresser, and he and I were talking, and then turned the lights out, you know. We're just about to go to sleep, and all of a sudden we hear this. I go, did you hear that, Jim? And he goes, yeah, what do you think that was? I said, I think your knife just cracked. He's like, no way. So he had to temper it. It was just under such strain, and there were 2 hairline cracks that popped out of it. So when you run that color, that light golden color, you're at about 350, 375. As it starts to get darker, you're around 400. But you're putting in enough energy to kind of let that structure relax a little. You're tempering the martensite.
And you're more likely to do it in an oven.
I am. Yeah, I am. Or molten salt. For me, the heat treat is control. I want to control the austenitizing temperature. I want to control time at temperature. I want to control the quench. I made these cards. They look kind of like a baby buggy. Got these curves, and they hold about 10 gallons of oil. And I've got an impeller in there, so the oil is constantly rotating. Some guys will take the knife and put it into a pan and move it back and forth. Some days you're kind of tired, some days you're not, so your agitation, your depth might be different. I stick it in the baby buggy, it's like exactly the same every time. Set point controller, so the oil temp is, so just control. Keep the oxygen off, know what your temperatures are, control them, hang time, and then note it. You know, you just keep a little notebook, because then you test to destruction. When you first start doing it, you make a little coupon, a little billet, forge it out, do everything that you think you should do, read the books, and then you heat treat it, and then put an edge, stick it on a vise, bend it, cut the bit, see. You really know, you know. If you're doing it here, man, you shoot upstairs, put it under the microscope, and rock door test it, and now you've got some information. What? Depends on the alloy. So the more alloys in there, the longer your hold time. So you can increase the time for the part to go to solution, can increase 100-fold depending on the alloys. If it's a simple part of steel, 5 minutes. If it's a relatively simple steel like 50 to 100, 10 minutes. So time. And then you're pretty much covered. If you're starting to talk about A2 or D2 or N4, it's probably 30 minutes at temperature. So then you need tool wrap or vacuum or inert or salt.
There are a lot of knife making books out there. There's a whole lot of internet. There's a whole lot of nonsense. Can you recommend any source that has a lot of technical knowledge?
John Verhoeven's book, Basic Metallurgy for Bladesmith. I think it's free online. I think it's in the PDF form. It's a really nice, I mean, for you guys, you can just follow this book. A lot of great technical information. And the real deal on heat treatment. It's not knife making per se, but it's he's addressing all the steels that we're using. 1086, some Damascus, 5400, 8PL. So it's really, really helpful for the heat treatment as far as making techniques. I would use the internet because there's so many great videos on Big Wheeler. There's great tips and techniques. I don't know who else is out there, but you can just kind of tell who's really on the good stuff and follow them.
So they
John Verhoeven, Oxford Journal, the Lord's He's called Metallurgy for Bladesmith. Yeah, it's a great book. It's very rich.
What rock will be on the for?
Depends on what I'm making. If it's a big chopper, it's probably going to be 58. If it's a sushi knife, 63, 64. If it's like those knives that I just sharpened, 60, 61. Depends on the customer. You know, I know they're really careful with their stuff and really tuned in. Like I visited a chef a couple nights ago. And if you guys don't know about this place, it's in Waltham. It's called Moody's Delicatessen. He does all these cured meats. This guy is a monster. The food is so good. The charcuterie is so good. But he's also severe ADHD. And so, you know, he goes, hey, wants some more knives? He's got this tool chest, right? He opens it up and it's got all the Kaizen foam in there. And each knife has got its own little home where it goes. Like that dude, I'm going to do a knife for him. It's going to be 63, 64 because he knows how to drive it and he's not going to tear it up. But if it's somebody I don't really know, I'm probably going to make it 60.
What should make it for me?
Well, at first probably 60, 61 maybe, and then the more we talk, we're like, oh no, and those were beautiful. It was a pleasure to sharpen. So I'm guessing. Yeah, and next time I'd go hard, you know, next time you said, no, push it, I want it to be 64, sure.